Hey, how's it going there, folks? Welcome back here to a Thursday. It is the Earthmaster on this March 7th, 2024 date, 11:05 a.m. here. California time. Latest activity here on the Earthquake 3D globe shows a 1.7 into the region of Alaska up here in the green flag. Did see some movement overnight here, including a 5-pointer down along the Peru-Chile trench right here. Starting off with the Iceland activity here first. A little bit of movement stirring up in the last 12 hours here, including a 3.1 earthquake over here across this rift zone, away from the Grindavik area, which has been the source of, well, the past couple eruptions here over the last few months. Still looking at a little bit of earthquake activity out here, mainly across the Savartsingi area, but really not a whole lot going on here today in terms of earthquake activity. So that's one of those days, once again, where we're just waiting for some further development to take place out here. But for now, about 26 earthquakes in the last 12 hours. And a look at the Atlantic Ocean out here, there's really not a whole lot of movement going on here across these divergent zones. Once those kick up, then pretty much we'll be certain that things will continue to pick up there across Iceland area as well. But for now, just kind of a stable day. All right, there's that movement there in South America, 5.0 coming into the Peru area, 36 kilometers deep here, just upstream. Over the past couple days or so, this area around the Chile region and southward has been seeing quite a bit of swarming going on there. Including, it looks like a 2.8 coming in right now. So we'll continue to watch. This area is showing some amplified conditions out here. As always, this region can produce some large damaging earthquakes. And it doesn't take hundreds of years for that to happen. So we'll continue to watch that. Further up north here along the southern segment of the Middle America Trench here, 5.7 coming in just after midnight. Off the coast here of Costa Rica, about 11 kilometers deep. Now, this earthquake was felt inland as well, around the Costa Rica area. See some of those blue squares indicative of some of the reports coming in. Historically, though, I mean, it's a very active region. You can look at anywhere up here around the Middle America Trench and see that earthquakes are very, very common, and they can get much larger than a 5.7. But for now, 5.7 coming in just after midnight, my time here. Around the Caribbean plate, further to the Puerto Rico, closer to the Puerto Rico area. A couple threes stirring up here. Mix of yesterday and today's earthquakes. Nothing major going on in terms of swarming across the states. Typical movement out there in Texas. A little bit of severe weather potential coming in today and the next couple days out here. We'll cover that towards the end of this update. Some movement up in Idaho once again. Not a whole lot going on in Yellowstone today. I did just check that out. Let me go over here to the Yellowstone overview and show you guys the lack of activity. Yesterday, we did see a handful of earthquakes there, but today a lot different. These are wind events right here, this darker colored reading on the graph. But as you can see, a lot of maybe some very small spike of an earthquake. These are probably 0.1 or below, not even worthwhile mentioning. But as far as any other earthquake activity, it looks fairly quiet. Wind events again up here. Further out to the west here, a little bit of movement up in Washington here recently. Been kind of watching that. Some 3s and 2s stirring up out here across the state of Washington. A little bit of earthquake activity there at Mount St. Helens as well. I was just looking at the Mount St. Helens seismograph station here. We'll key that up. That's going to be this one right here, last 24 hours. There's some of that earthquake activity that's been occurring there at Washington, within the Washington area, the 3 and a couple 2s in there. As far as local seismic activity, going to be some of these smaller lines on the graph. Now, I'm not 100% certain if this isn't maybe some ice quakes, would happen quite a bit in the colder regions, and of course Mount St. Helens has a lot of snow on it. And some maybe a mix of some earthquake activity as well. So we'll have to continue to watch that. There's been no elevated notices here across any of the gas monitoring stations there that monitor this volcano. Carbon dioxide kind of peaked up here a little bit, but that could be, who knows what that could be. But it did stir up a little bit here in the last couple days. If you look at, oops, let me go back here. These other gas monitoring stations here, like sulfur dioxide, hydrogen sulfide, all remain pretty calm. But as far as carbon dioxide goes, it did peak a little bit here, but again, uncertain as to what that may be from. It may be from something happening nearby, like an environmental source outside the area. But aside from that, looking at these other seismograph stations here, there's some of that distant, the 3s and the 2s once again. Couple localized earthquakes. Those are definitely some earthquakes here. So there is a handful of earthquakes happening there around Mount St. Helens, and we'll continue to watch that and then report back on anything if it changes. Northern California, getting some movement here across the Clear Lake volcanic field. Now, obviously active underneath the area, right? Still an active region, but this is due to these plants out here, these hydrothermal energy plants that create steam. Well, there's a whole process involved. I'm not 100% certain the exact process, but there's many facilities out here that create energy by utilizing the heated areas below. And many of these earthquakes are just right there at the plant's locations. It looks a little bit more active today, but occasionally we can see a couple hundred of these earthquakes on any given day. Right now, about 59 or so out there in those areas. Bay Area of California, fairly quiet. A handful of smaller quakes here. Really nothing major going on. 1.4 near Pleasant Hill. That's just off the Concord Fault, looks like. As far as further down south goes, well, a handful of earthquakes as well. Up in the, southern end here of the Sierra Nevada mountains. A little bit of activity across the Ridgecrest area. And no major swarming going on across the southern portion of the state. A look at the 2.5 map and above. Well, that pretty much removes every single earthquake out here across California. So the majority, all of it, is just some microquake activity, which is very, very common across a major plate boundary. Up into the Alaska area, same thing. Major plate boundary, major subduction zone. A look at the 2.5 map and above only shows a handful of earthquakes up here. No major swarmings, no unusual activity. And across the Hawaii area, getting a little bit of movement up here across the Mauna Loa region. Although these earthquakes are not at the surface, maybe that one, but this one's fairly deep, about 40 kilometers underneath this area. And a handful of deeper quakes around the region in the last 24 hours. Nothing major of concern there. Haven't really seen any changes in any of the systems. We'll check that out here real quick. And by the way, they're putting out, instead of daily updates on Kilauea Volcano, due to the declining activity, they're going to weekly updates. So I should tell you something right there, that things are just kind of mellowing out. Not a whole lot of difference there on the tilt meter station. As you can see, it may look like a lot on this little graph, but these readings are very minor compared to what we had seen here in the last couple months. And it doesn't even show the elevated activity. It was way up here off the chart. I can't remember the exact measurement, but we're just slowly going back up here after a huge displacement of magma from the summit off to the southwest rift zone out here. And it's kind of out here, I believe, because we had watched this trail of earthquake activity lead offshore here. So that's kind of where all that magma went to. The question is now, what's next? Recharging of the summit. We'll have to watch that and see what happens. All right, rest of the Earth here. Nothing showing up here on New Zealand, but I know we've had a handful of earthquakes out here. This is the latest. Make sure I got the latest information here from the NewZealandQuakes.com site. Trying to see what I did with my. Okay. A little bit of deep earthquake activity across New Zealand once again here. Let's pull up these magnitudes. Most of this activity in the 4 range is occurring up here across the southern end of the Kermadec Trench, which is right here. The Hikurangi subduction zone right about here. So we have seen some deeper earthquakes underneath this area, which would be the subduction zone. Here's the entry level of the subduction zone. And then, of course, underneath North Island, you get these deeper quakes. The latest one out here is going to be this 3.2, which is 117 kilometers underneath this area. And the EMSC showing that earthquake here as well, 3.2, 116 kilometers. So definitely notice a lot of deeper activity here recently underneath the North Island. And I still think there's some potential movement about ready to take place in that area. It's been all too active north and south here recently, and eventually this plate boundary has to adjust and accommodate for the strain that's been taking place around it. Solomon Islands, this earthquake here from yesterday, so a lot of quietness going on out here today except for down in New Zealand area, deeper regions, but upstream here, fairly quiet. Most of the activity, as you can see, over here across Japan, and a big-time clustering going on here across the Philippines southward area. A lot of this, though, from yesterday, but most recent earthquake activity, 4.5 and a 4.7 here within this zone. Kind of keeping an eye on that area. It's been quite active here recently. And, of course, up around the Japan region, noticed this last night with some deeper activity underneath the Sea of Osaka region. This is the Kurokamachaka Trench, very deep earthquake, 379 kilometers here into this major subduction zone. Also some activity stirring up here in Japan. We did see, this earthquake was from yesterday, we did see a little bit of further movement following some of this activity. This earthquake here was this morning, 7 o'clock this morning. In fact, my time, 4.4, 57 kilometers deep. So all this activity right here telling me that things are definitely straining out here, switching up in terms of momentum and pressure. And, of course, the Pacific Plate has to adjust as well, right? It's been seeing a lot of deeper movement here across the Tonga area and Fiji region. And a lot of deeper and, of course, a lot of surface activity here. So eventually, all this has to adjust accordingly around the entire plate boundary. And so we're seeing some of that right now, but not a whole lot of larger scale movement. Most of the activity we've seen here across the Kurokamachaka is deep earthquake activity, and that's just, it's leading me to believe that there's some further large scale movement about ready to take place here. A look at the last 30 days, a handful of earthquakes up here, but really no big earthquakes, 5.1, a couple other smaller quakes as well. And this is a sizable subduction zone. If you really think about it, it's huge and reinforced. This is the area right here. Let me see if I can pull this up a little bit. This is the Japan Trench right here. You got the Kurokamachaka leading up here, right? Minimal 83 mm per year. That's just an average. Sometimes certain areas may have a little bit more. So it doesn't take hundreds of years for buildup in terms of slip accumulation for a big earthquake. This area is reinforced, of course, by the Pacific Plate. Notice the arrows pointing towards each other right here. The arrows of the Pacific Plate moving off to the northwest. And then this area is reinforced by the North American Plate, which is right here. And then reinforced by that, by the Eurasia Plate pointing down into this area. So I'm really surprised we really haven't seen any major earthquake activity. And, a lot of people ask me why the Western Pacific out here is always more active than the Eastern. Well, look at the arrows. Where are they all pointing to, right? All these arrows from the Pacific, the Filipino Plate, and the Eurasia Plate are slamming right into this area. So we're consistently seeing earthquake activity out here. Just like the swarms there in the Philippines, always seeing earthquake activity. Not so much over here, right? Yeah, we got some accumulation strain across the North American and the Pacific Plate, but there's no arrows pointing together here like we're seeing over here. All these large plates kind of slamming into each other, subducting, creating these common earthquakes that occur all the time. But I'm really surprised we haven't seen any larger scale movement out here in some time. Eventually it's going to have to happen. It has to adjust. All right, further to the west out here, China, let's see, a couple earthquakes out there, 5.6. This is a notable earthquake due to, let's see here, no reports of it. I'm not for sure it was in a populated region either. Let's see what we got here. Population density. Yeah, it doesn't look like there's a lot out there. I don't really see any towns. I'm not for sure why it's a notable earthquake, but okay. Either way, a 5.6 and a 5-pointer out there earlier this morning, literally within minutes of each other, by the way. Further activity out in the Mediterranean, although, look at that. USGS reporting a 2.9 on the map here for this area. It's a little odd. But that earthquake swarm that's been occurring out there in the Mediterranean areas, let's zoom in on that area real quick here. Got to refresh this map right here. Shows that things are calming down out here around the Ionian region. We have been seeing a decent swarm out here. This is the last week of earthquake activity. Been kicking up, right? I think we've seen a couple. I'm pretty certain that we've seen some upper threes and maybe even a 4 out there as well. 3.8, 3.8. And it kind of, there really was no main quake out here, just a bunch of swarming going on. But it looks as though, things are toning down out here for now. Really haven't seen a whole lot of migration from this area that would indicate, some other areas to watch. But that's, it's, these swarms kind of come and go without any type of main quake. So, and that was one of them. Again, Iceland pretty quiet out there. What else we got here? So looking at the newer activity here today, there's a deeper movement down south here. I still think we need to watch this area. Look at the, let me pull up the last 7 days of activity out here. A lot of deep, larger movement up north here. A lot happening on the Kermadec Trench as well. 2 big earthquakes down here across the Macquarie Island area along the plate boundary, 6.7 and 6.1, all within the last week. And all this activity occurring along the plate boundary here with New Zealand sitting right in the middle. And we've seen a lot of deeper quakes happening, some smaller ones not listed on the map. The ones that are is a 4.4. This is a deep earthquake into the underneath the Bay of Plenty area, 4.4 at 383 kilometers deep. And then we also had another deep earthquake here, 4.6. So a lot of deeper activity specifically in this region. That is the interactive region between the Kermadec Trench here and then the Hikurangi subduction zone, again, which sits roughly right about here. I don't know why I'm not using my pin. I can use these. Just kind of about right here. You can see it. Well, the plate boundary itself kind of points it out. And it's been quite a while since we've seen any major movement. And, of course, this is all kind of straining in this area here from the Pacific Plate. And, yeah, so kind of, keep an eye on this area. We'll just watch it and see how it does. Let's see here. I got the arrow back. All right. I wish I had a kind of like an external device that I can hook up here to the computer, to where I could draw on this end on my side without having to use an on-screen option here. I'm sure they got them. I just can't think of the name or any correct models. If you guys have any ideas, maybe they have them on Amazon. I just can't think of the exact name I'd be looking for. All right, as far as being able to draw on screen here. Space weather activity. Well, we do have a potential G1 class storm coming up here on the 9th, according to the solarham.net site. Looks like on the March 9th time period. Just a very short, slight chance of seeing a G1 class storm. I was looking at this last night. The current models here show this CME, a very small CME, being blasted off. Just here's the Earth in the green. Just going to barely get a little glancing blow right here. Not really expecting much, if anything. We've seen this a lot in the past here where we'll be that close, right? Looks like maybe something to happen, and then it will just completely miss us. So really not expecting anything, but they did put up the chance there of a G1 class storm here on the March 9th time period of UTC time. So that's going to be here in a day or so. As far as current flaring activity, well, there's not a whole lot going on. 3599 right here is about the only one that has a little bit of hope to it. That's about all we can hope for, because all these other sunspots are fairly stable and quite frankly, they do not look like much at all. Even 35.99 here is not looking all that promising, but it's about the only thing that we have for right now in terms of hope for flaring activity. And that's going to be this region right here. It's a sunspot. That's all it is. Right now, 75% chance for a C flare, M flare at 15, X flare, and proton event fairly low. The SFI energy index here, very low as well. And so we'll just have to watch that, and hopefully the sun will come back to life here. All right, severe weather outlook today. Decent chance of tornado probability out here, 5%. They added a 5% zone here across central Texas. Looks like that might be out there around Brady. I love visiting the Brady area in Texas. Some good people out there, some good food, and I kind of like it out there. Very friendly folks out there in Brady. Weatherford, Brownwood, Texas. Cleburne, Texas out there as well in the 5% zone. So that means that there's a greater probability of seeing some tornadoes out here within this zone. But the 2% zone is in there as well. So if you're anywhere within these regions, heads up in terms of tornado potential today. Also some wind, and they added a hatched area for some hail threats. Now these hatched areas and the dashed lines indicate that there's a 10% or greater probability of 2-inch diameter hail or larger within 25 miles of a point. And I know Texas can really throw off those softballs out of the sky and bigger. So just a heads up if you're in that area. And of course, a large threat across the entire region here for some hail. But can't ignore that 5% potential for some tornado activity today. Let's see what we got tomorrow. Tomorrow it shifts a little bit to the east. But look at that huge 5% zone. Now this is, a lot of wooded areas here. And this area has been hit fairly recently with some tornadoes last year as well. That's a pretty decent chance there, 5% zone with wind and hail in there as well. That's for tomorrow. And we'll cover that a little bit later tonight, see if they've updated anything. Either way, we got 3 days of severe weather potential. And each day shifts a little bit further to the east. All right, let's see. Numerical models out here. There's some of that weather stirring up out here right now. That's going to intensify a little bit. And that's all, basically you got these colder air. See these dashed cold weather lines? A lot of colder air interacting with this low pressure here. That's got some warmer moisture. That's going to stir up those storms today and over the next couple days out there. California, we got our next storm system knocking on the door early next week, it looks like. Not really expecting much. Another one behind that. Some rain coming in and some snow. But after that, things really dry up out there across the west coast. And it's starting to look more typical, like a springtime pattern out here. So we'll have to watch that. It's not looking like we'll see anything else after that. I could use a couple more good storms out here. We had, obviously a decent winter so far. It's been nice and wet and snowy up in the mountains there, and in the valley as well, as far as rain goes. Let's check out the rain accumulation here across the states over the next 10 days or so. This is an ECMWF model. Of course, out here around Texas, Oklahoma, the storm's going to be firing up here over the next couple of days, bringing some rain out there across those areas. There's our big storms coming into the Pacific Northwest. Not so much here in the valley where I'm at, just outside of Chico. Maybe after all these storms, it might get close to an inch of rain. But as always, along the coastline, these guys get hammered with precipitation, and that looks to be the case here over the next week and a half as far as storm systems go. As far as any snow goes, well, I know we got some colder air coming down here. 10 days, I think that's going to be after the 10-day period. Either way, some Great Lake snow up here in portions of the Northeast as well. Looks like some snow accumulation. And, of course, up here in the Pacific Northwest and the higher terrain in the mountains of California, going to see some more snow on top of all of the snow they've seen. So that's good. I mean, we definitely need our snowpack built up. Aside from that, it's Right now, this is a current scenario for temperatures. Warmer air, you can see that collision line right there. You got some south winds coming up with that colder air coming down from the north. And of course, all this is going to intermingle today and stir up some severe weather potential. Still quite cold up north. Nice and toasty down south. All right, folks. Have yourself a good day. Seismograph stations there look fairly quiet. Coming up here on our member drawing in about a week. About 8 days here, it looks like. If you're not a member, jump on board. Become a member here. You get some extra videos, extra perks, extra emojis for chat. And, of course, we always do the monthly drawing here, coming up on 2 years that we've been doing it. Giving away prizes there to the members that jump on board. Kind of a way to show our support back to the folks there that like to support us. We'll catch you guys back out here a little bit later tonight. Have a good one, folks.